Welcome to Switch Your Stitch podcast with your host, Katie Turner. Super excited today. I've got the wonderful Dr. Louise Mahler with me, who is a keynote speaker, a lover of education, I'm assuming with the doctorate in front of you. She is an inspiration as she spent 10 years on a European operatic stage. She's an author, and we're talking about, we've got so much content to go over between leadership, body language, eye content, the voice contact, the voice of depression. We're going to have a fantastic podcast and so many tips to touch on here, and mostly how do we build confidence, especially when so many people are scared of public speaking or even conducting a podcast themselves. So I'm going to hand it over to you, Dr. Louise. If you can give us a little brief background, I know that's hard to do in a limited time, about your journey thus far.
Yes, well, I say there's lots of different parts to my background, and part of it comes from my business study, and I guess that culminated in my PhD in business. And but the other side is I actually sang opera, and so I put those together. And although they seem like quite disparate careers, actually all roads lead to Rome. They all lead to this area of leadership communication. What is the language of leadership?
How did you know you were great at singing? Because it's definitely something I tried when I was younger. Was it inherently offered to you because your parents were in the arts, or was it something that you picked up?
Well, my mother sang, and so we sang around the house all the time. And I remember at school they used to say, you'd be, doing things, and they'd say, do you do that at home? And it's like, yes. Everything we did at home. Do you want any dinner? Da, da, da. Everything was a song in our house. And I can't say I was particularly good at it to start with, but, practice makes perfect.
Definitely does. So were you a broke artist to start with? Because this is where we mostly start, is when we start pursuing our passion and unsure how to make money from it.
Oh, goodness me. As an opera singer, I think the term would be pushing shit uphill. I was in Vienna, and I had tremendous backing, people who'd given me money, scholarships that I'd won, awards, Australia Council grants. I had a soloist contract at the Vienna State Opera for, young singers coming up, and you're surviving, and you're doing oratorios on the weekend, and you're teaching singing, and you do whatever it takes. It's just that I got to a stage where I woke up one morning and just went, I don't want to do this anymore. It wasn't, I guess, intellectually stimulating enough.
Right. Because I know that I've done some podcasts with business coaches to artists, and I've come from a very big fitness background, and people have told to pursue their passion without the management of money behind it, or they have a bad relationship with money because they're told that they shouldn't want it, that they should just do it because of the love of it. Did you find a lot of people in the arts are similar to that?
Oh, look, as someone who spent a decade in the arts, I would, anyone whose children want to go into the arts, I'm like, don't. I'd be one of those parents. I mean, all of the famous parents, Joan Sutherland singing, none of them even gave their children singing lessons.
Right.
Don't go there. Having said that, of course, there are exceptions to every rule. You have to follow your dream, and sometimes you can't not follow your dream. And there was an old man on a program I was doing once, and he wasn't very well. And he said to me, my boys are in the arts and they're in a band. And I said, all right. And he said, look, do you think they've got a chance? I said, well, it's not very, it's not very hard. It's not very easy. And he said, look, I worry, because the worst thing is one son took the other sons in. Now all my three sons are in the band. And, what sort of career is it? And I'm thinking, oh, my heavens, this guy's kids are ruined. And then he said, oh, they've got a band. Anyway, if you ever hear of them, they're called Jet. And I went, Oh, okay. And I didn't know bands. And I came home and I told my son, and he's going, Jet. Anyway, the next week, it wasn't the next week, might have been the next month, they won the American Music Awards, and they dedicated it to their father who just died.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And I'm going, I had part of that story.
Well, especially now with things like Spotify and streaming services, I mean, I can only assume that the money involved in the industry is even less to the artist than it was selling albums. So
yeah, it's not my world anymore, so I don't know.
So that first moment you had to stand up on stage and sing to a huge audience, how did you feel?
Oh, I've had performance anxiety all my life. So I've always had to battle performance anxiety. Yeah.
And how do you get through that? Like, I remember my first class I was teaching, and it was a small 50 people in front of me, and just to try and look at them as if they're in their underwear, or, terrible sweating under the arm, or a white shirt, terrible idea. Have you got any tips for people who are experiencing that?
This is a very under-discussed topic. People, I think the statistics say 4% of people have performance anxiety. Not in my book. Just about everybody has performance anxiety. Then the problem is recognizing it. What are the patterns? What do you need to do to solve it? And the minute you say to me, imagining everyone in the nude, another one is to imagine, put yourself in a box. These for me are hideous ways of solving the problem, because they're distancing yourself from the client. It's making them demeaning. That's not the idea at all. The idea is that you are as one. You are not distant in any way. So recognizing it, rejecting what has been very poor advice that we've been given through our lives, and rethinking what the new advice is, then putting that advice into a pattern which you call your technique and take on. So people need a ritual. Katie, if you get up on a stage and you're suddenly thinking, I'm nervous, what do I do? It's too late. People who have performance anxiety need a ritual that you follow before a performance, as you walk on, beginning a performance. People say, oh, I'm fine after 2 minutes. Well, let me tell you something. You don't have 2 minutes.
That's right. And that's so true, because what is, the expectations of you from the minute you step on stage is to entertain, engage, educate. And if you've left that for 2 minutes, you've already lost them.
Yeah.
So what are some of those patterns, or what is that sort of, it's almost like a behavioral theory, isn't it? What are some of those steps that you can take? Have you got any advice there to have people move through that?
Totally. There's so many things that you can do. And for some people, taking a deep breath and trying to relax works. For most people, it doesn't. So we're looking for ultimate arousal. We're not looking for relaxation. We're looking at moving the energy from the upper body to the lower body. So what are some tips? One that I work by and swear by is a breathing technique called Kapalbhati. And Kapalbhati is a short, sharp breath out, where the stomach goes in, the diaphragm gets kicked from underneath, air comes out. There is no chest pumping, no head movement, no chest pumping. These are disasters. It's all in the lower body, the activity. The other one is to keep your elbows off your body. So to put your hands out, very Amy Cuddy, the power position. And then when you walk, to walk with your elbows going back, to make large strides, to get that lower body working for you, get the energy out of here and down to there, to smile, to have a mantra. So to have a mantra, I love you, 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 to be very in control of your eyes, where your eyes go as you walk on. Nothing must be left up to chance, because if you have performance anxiety, you get enormous strength from knowing exactly what you're doing and doing it.
I love that. So gone are the days of, that's what I was told. Imagine everybody in their underwear. The other thing I was told is, you know more than them and they want to hear from you. So I was like, okay, I know more than them. In this moment, do I know more than them? I don't really know. I can't even think.
You see, Katie, all of that stuff about the psychology, they want to hear you, they're not against. We start to go into our mind. It's too slow. The technique is too slow to look at your mental patterns and try to go back. What is my fear? Why do I have that fear? Let's overcome that fear. Oh, have you got 2 years of psychotherapy? There you go. Go down that toilet. Instead, work on your breath, your body. The only mind technique is mantra, repeated mantra, to lock out those negative scripts that we have in our head that are very difficult to get rid of.
So what led you to the PhD in business? So you're obviously a lover of education. I am too. How did you get from what you were doing to business? Did it incite you? Was it something that you didn't understand that you wanted to study more of?
No, I actually, when I came out of opera, I ended up in a large organization, and there were fabulous people there doing fantastic things. And then they would stand up in front of the group and they were just different people, and I meant to take over the world in a business sense, but I became passionate about how they performed, how one performs in front of an audience. And so I just kept studying. I was asked to present at a master's program down here in Melbourne, and I did. And then I said to them, I'd actually like to do this master's program. So I did it. And then the lecturer said to me, you should do a PhD. So they actually gave me a scholarship to do a PhD, which is what I did.
Do you think that, for me, higher education, I feel, or education in itself, isn't it about the information that's being projected or received? It's the delivery system. I think that education, the people who write it have a completely different skill set to those who should be delivering it. And I'm assuming through your background, you're able to engage an audience with that information and deliver it in a way that every single person in that room can understand, regardless of their learning, the way in which they learn.
Yep. Look, engaging audiences is my business, is my life, is my passion, is my specialty. And people don't read their mobile phones in my sessions. And it's not rocket science. We're just not taught the techniques to do it. And so often we think it's the audience and the way they're responding, but it's our responsibility to guide their eye, to be of interest, to have great structure, to engage people. And it is possible, and we have undervalued those skills and not worked on them.
Yeah, I couldn't disagree with you, because I used to do leadership training. I'm out of that now. I do my own business. But the same thing, I think it's not rocket science. And the amount of lectures I sat in, I did an economics degree and thought, oh my God, I'm going to go to sleep in this. And I don't discount how much you know as a lecturer, but the way in which you're engaging your audience, there's a huge skill gap there. Is that where you are niching or niching right now?
Well, yes, not necessarily in education, but in actually getting engagement. I guess mostly with CEOs or people who are politicians or people who need to engage. When it comes to education or any lecture, I say, if you give me these notes and I can read them through having a coffee and be more interested than I am listening to you, why are we here? Why are we here? And people don't realize that they have a responsibility to engage, to bring something different. You have that opportunity in front of people to really bring the document to life. And we don't. People read. What?
Yeah, that's... And did your education, doing your master's and your PhD, help with that skill set? Or was that a skill set you inherently had and then you could apply all of that information to it?
Well, interestingly, I had quite a large skill set, except I couldn't explain it to people. And so what the PhD did was it gave me the tools to explain what I did and to look at the background, theory, ancient cultures, where do these skills come from? Are they valid? And how are they useful in the everyday world for people who are leading the thought of others?
And because we now live in a global society as well. So how does it, do you believe that those mannerisms, the way in which we communicate, differ dependent on where you're from in the world?
Some do, some don't. Eye contact can vary, but in Western culture, basically, you look at people for respect, you look away for disrespect. In other cultures, you look at people for disrespect, you look away for respect, or you look at people or you don't look at people who are high, blah, blah, blah. But gestures are pretty global. There are some very small gestures that people do that might mean things, but otherwise, in general, gestures are global. Opening your body is about trust. It's about revealing yourself. And that's the same in Africa, Spain, Australia.
Right. And is there anything else what about body language in leadership? So this is one area that you really specialize in. Can you give us a little bit more insight into leadership body language?
Well, leadership body language is changing because for the last 50 years, and only 50 years in human society, we've had a certain set of body language rules, and they are sit still at the table and speak. Now, there's no smiling, no mention of emotion, and just speaking. Now, as a woman, my voice is an octave higher than a man's voice. So I am going to lose in that game always. If I don't start to bring in my gestures, if I don't start to bring in architectural design of my space, if I don't start to smile, if I don't start to express emotion in a professional way. And these are the things that people like Jacinda Ardern are bringing into leadership that we're seeing. And they were skills that more than 50 years ago existed. And we're bringing them back. Gestures, smiling, mentioning emotion, movement.
Why do you think we lost that? How do you think we went from being quite expressive, being quite open, to then this still culture of, you have to be so serious to be taken seriously. And then now we're saying, okay, let's go back to
I give quite a lot of weighting on that to Hitler, and it was the end of the Second World War. And, Hitler practiced his gestures. There's pictures of Hitler in 1929 actually practicing his gestures in photography, and the pictures were supposed to be destroyed, but they weren't. From my experience in Europe, I actually worked with people who were part of that regime, and I know what they did there. Of course, it was a disaster. And we associated the communication skills with disaster. So when we came out of the Second World War, we became no more manipulation, no more radicalization, no more. We just became it was about the content and the words. And so I put a lot of weighting on Hitler for that.
And do you think that we're really emphasizing these days on empathetic leadership? Do you think that can also be brought about by the way in which we communicate with our hand gestures, with our body language?
Yes. Reflection, the way that we speak. The language, let me tell you about the language, is that most people, when they stand up to present, they'll say two things. They say, I'm so excited to be here, and today I'd like to tell you about, or I'd like to talk about. Well, both of those are massively ostracizing statements. First of all, when we say, I'm so excited to be here, working with audiences for the last couple of decades, let me tell you how much audiences care, how excited you are to be there. They don't.
Very true.
Second of all is, I'm going to tell you or talk to you. They are illegal words, tell and talk. They're very one-sided. The minute I say I'm going to tell or talk, your responsibility is what? You have no responsibility. So I say, I'm going to tell you something. The audience just goes, oh yeah, I'm going to read my mobile phone, because I have no responsibility in this at all. It's one way. So these are very ostracizing. We want to say how exciting it is to be here with you. We want to say, today we're going to explore. We are going to explore. It's a different language now where it's no longer you versus the world, but you're in together with the world.
Wow, that's huge insights to me as well, because I'm always like, I'm excited to be here with you, but yeah, it's didn't realize. Thank you for that, because I'm going to have to turn that on its head. Now, we also talked about the voice of depression. Now, this is something that I'm not too sure whether you've written about or whether you deliver information about or workshops. Can you give our audience an insight into that?
Yeah, all of the above. So my PhD is the psychology of voice in particular, and which then leads to body, because body and gestures guide voice. So in leadership. So what happens is we're very unaware of the psychology of airflow that comes out of the body. So sound is just pulsations of air. That's all it is. So we need to manage this airflow. And what many people do, it's become a trend over the last 10 years, many women do, is withdraw their air so that we get vocal fry. Vocal fry is a malfunction of the vocal folds. And it has a psychological impact, which says, I don't want to talk to you. I don't want to be here. What it's saying is I don't have enough air coming out of my body to make actual real sound. And as a consequence of that, I'm not touching or massaging the people around me with my sound. I am disconnecting myself. So, that's vocal fry. But another sound is where, when we get depression, people need to know that the vocal folds are actually they're a valve to the lungs, and their secondary function is to make sound. Their primary function is to stop you from drowning. Now, we can't tell the difference between drowning from water or drowning from emotion. We shut. So when the vocal folds, when the throat starts to shut, we start to get that kind of crackly sound. It's called the voice of depression. So that's the voice of depression. What I'm doing is I'm sticking out a part of the throat called the false vocal folds, and they're sitting on the vocal folds and stopping them from working properly. And you might find that people are saying, how was your weekend? You go, oh, it was great. I went out for lunch. I did this and this. And then they go, how's your project going? And the person will go, yeah, no, project's going great. And suddenly that voice changes into the voice of drowning, the voice of depression. And, the sooner we realize that, the sooner we really know what's going on for people. The voice gives everything away.
Can that be applied to, let's say, our legal system, do you think, when we're doing, honesty checks and our lie detectors? Do you think this could be also applied to people who are giving statements?
Yes, well, everybody's always asking me about truth or lies. And I like to say, I work with leaders. I assume they don't lie. So I'm not doing truth or lies. I'm about truthful people having influence. But yes, you can read people. You need to really know what you're doing if you're reading people. So, for instance, one of the areas of deception is if you suddenly change, with eye movements or with voice, suddenly you go, oh, why would you ask me that? And we suddenly change our pitch, and people go, oh, she's lying. Well, maybe not. Maybe I have a visual preference, which I do, and maybe I just got caught out. I know as a leader that I can't go into that voice, and that if I did something, I have to trigger myself back to a voice. Yeah, so you can tell, but you have to be very careful to be knowing what you're doing if you're analysing voices for truth or lying.
Because it's very hard as a leader. You can't be biased in any way. You are realistically not allowed to have an opinion inflected or reflected into your decision-making skills. But unfortunately, that does happen.
Oh, you couldn't avoid it not happening. Yeah, it is the old Moravian statistics that everybody quotes, saying that body is 53%, voice is 40%. That doesn't leave much for the actual content. And there's other research by Bert Whistle and different people, and they all come up with similar statistics. Your body and your voice are your communication. And the more emotional the people are that you're speaking to, the more that's true. So if there's no emotion, it's less true. If there's a lot of emotion, it is everything.
Yeah, I can just imagine. So, Doctor, on the opera stage for 10 years, a keynote speaker, author, what's next?
Oh, well, wouldn't you love? I want to spread the word in what I do. And I was keynote speaker of the year in Australia, and I was speaking globally when the pandemic hit. So, get out there speaking again would be fantastic. But otherwise, what I've found over the pandemic is that I've been able to go deeper with the people that I work with and run retreats in the Yarra Valley and, really do immersion for people, because I'm not flitting off around the place speaking. And that's been hugely beneficial to see the changes in people, because I'm passionate about making change. I'm not speaking about it for a joke. I actually want to change people's lives and do. And that's very rewarding.
Do you work mostly with corporates, or have you delved into the politician world?
Oh, yeah. No, I work with politicians, federal, state, local, whatever.
Amazing. So many people you've worked with. Do you ever actually just reflect on your accomplishments? Is that something part of your journey? Like, I know some people go, oh, you should be so proud. And I think, oh, I'm just continually seemingly moving forward, not so much looking at it, until I do sometimes sit back and go, oh, wow, I actually did that myself.
Oh, no, it's funny. When I won the Keynote Speaker of the Year, I'm sitting there, I'm having dinner with friends because it was all virtual. And, I knew I was in it, but, you don't win. And they were reading it out and they're going, oh, and this year's winner, it has done this and this. And I thought, gosh, that's similar to me. I'm absolutely serious. Absolutely serious. And then they said, and one of the key things is that when she's on the stage, she's very funny. And I went, oh, not many funny female speakers. And then they go, the winner is Louise Mahler. And I'm like, you don't sort of appreciate what you've done when people talk about the PhD or, all of those things. And you sort of, it's just what I did. So I don't give myself many brownie points for that. And sometimes, some very odd, misguided people might see me as a guru or want to be me or something like that. And I go, why? And I'm always striving for the next thing, what's the next goal.
I love that.
I think we should be reflecting. I'm actually seeing that as a failing in myself. I recognize that.
Strengths and weaknesses, that can kind of be another one. How do you actually build confidence in yourself? Can you give our audience some tips as to, so the reflection aspect may well help when actually looking at things you have accomplished? I know I don't do that very well either. What are some other tips you with your experience and know-how? How do you think people can actually build on that confidence?
Well, when I'm queen, I'm changing the laws. And the law that I would change is that when people say to others, you know what you need? More confidence. For me, they will go straight to jail, because that's cruelty to dumb animals. People walk away and think, oh, I need more confidence, apparently. Where do you get it? You can't buy it. And people expect it to come. And then the way that they go is to ostracize, all of the wrong techniques about going psychologically. What are my fears? Why am I this? Which is quite slow, when what you can do is intervene at the breath, the body, the voice, the gestures. So it's all about understanding a change plan. What am I doing now? What is my eye contact? What are my gestures? What is my posture under stress? All of the things we do. And then what could I do? What actually works? And then practice. We underestimate the value of practice. I have a phrase: the amateur practices till they get it right, the professional practices till they can't get it wrong. And there is a very big leap between those two areas, and practice is the only way. As a singer, you do 8 hours a day to, get the voice smoothed out. Well, why? I offer people little tips, like write down a difficult question that you might have and give it to people in your office or your family. And what they have to do is take you by surprise and walk in and suddenly read out this question and, take you by surprise. Practice. And people go, that's weird, Louise. That's not weird. That's reality.
I think that's, and another quote that I reflect on is, you should love what you do, because 95% of it is operational and 5% is execution. So like as an artist, you're practicing 95% of the time to actually execute that on stage 5% of the time, right?
Yeah.
So that's great advice. Practice, practice, practice. Because I think that a lot of people, especially with the internet these days, they do think it's instant gratification as opposed to those foundations that haven't changed.
Yeah.
Just practice, I think. So thank you for your time today. Where can our audience find more about you if they want? Are you doing keynote speaking virtually, or?
I am. Yeah, I've done it the last 2 years.
Yeah.
But but look, do you know it's the easiest thing in the world? I am the only Dr. Louise Mahler in the world. You know, I hate to do it. I've got a big one that's called, you know, Jenny Smith, but I'm not. I'm Dr. Louise Mahler, the only one in the world. There's a handful of Louise Mahlers. I am so easy to find on the internet, on LinkedIn, on Facebook, on Instagram, on Twitter. You know, I'm there.
I found you very easily on Instagram this morning when I did a quick post. I just did the DR Louise, and pretty much the first one that popped up. So I do love that. Thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it. And all the way from Melbourne, and us people here in Sydney understand what you have been through over the last 2 years now after coming out of 20 weeks of lockdown. So I hope you have a fabulous Christmas, and thank you again for your time. Appreciate it. Thank you.